Last weekend was the Irish general elections, and it looks like, with all the votes counted, that Fine Gael and Fine Gael will once again be able to form a coalition government, meaning that the next government is going to look a lot like the last government, except their last coalition partner, the Greens, have managed to go from 11 seats to 1 seat, only retaining the seat of their party leader. See, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil basically blamed every single problem on their climate plan on the Greens, and it looks like the voters heard them loud and clear and have really crushed that party into nothingness. But this is just one part of the story, as a really large amount of independents continue to be elected into the Irish Parliament, slightly less than last time, but still a significant amount. And most of those independent people are people who were not given seats to run in by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, which means they are already ideological allies that will be ripe for the picking to form a coalition together with Fine Gael and Fine Gael. The other big thing that is happening, we see a huge rebound of Labour and the Social Democrats. They have almost doubled their seat count. And we also have to keep in mind one very important caveat in this entire election is that there are 14 additional seats in the Irish Dáil. So this is like a very important thing to understand, that if they're going up by 1 or 2, that's kind of the natural progression because of the increase in seats. So that's not so much a great victory. That's more staying basically at base. It's also important to note that left-wing People Before Profit lost seats, 2 of them, and that's especially bad considering more seats in the parliament total. We also have the Liberals coming in with 4 seats, and the nationalist right-wing split from Sinn Féin onto getting 2 seats, doubling their seat count. Now, the final parliamentary election seat count is slightly deceptive on the actual popularity of each of these parties. It's a bit more important for us to look at the first round preference because Ireland does a ranked choice system, which means that there are several rounds where votes are transferred through the preferences. If we look at first preferences, we see a much worse situation for almost all of those larger parties. We have Fine Gael with significantly lower of a percentage. We have Fine Gael actually doing significantly better comparatively to Fine Gael. And we also see Sinn Féin doing dramatically worse than their final results would tell us otherwise. Which means when we're talking about Ireland, it is vital to understand that transfers, that second and third place, are what gets you into the parliament and maximizes your potential. Because the parties of Fine Gael and Fine Gael work together so closely, they're putting 1 and 2 preferences with each other, which means they both get an added boost by that coordination. Likewise, this can happen with other parties and other groups, but they are not as closely tied together, so they don't get this maximal benefit like Fine Gael is. And while Fine Gael is dominant right now in this election cycle, we have to understand this is one of their weakest positions historically, and the weakest position for a party in government for first round preferences. Back in the day, and not a million years ago, but just in the late 80s and even the 90s and the early 2000s, this was a party that was able to pull up 40% of the vote. Now they are struggling to get north of 20. But they are very good at playing the transfer game, which is how they are able to get into first place with 48 seats, which is way better than that initial first round would make you think at the end. This election also saw record low turnout for an Irish general election, with 59.7% of the ballots cast. This means 2 in 5 didn't choose to vote. And while 59% sounds good for a lot of countries, this is particularly bad for Ireland. The core issue of this election, in both polling and the clear material reality of Ireland, is the problem of the housing crisis. And unfortunately, several months of Irish politics were consumed about arguments around immigration, an issue that ranked at the bottom for what people were concerned about for this election in Ireland. The second most important issue was the cost of living crisis, as Ireland is currently paying the second highest prices in the entire European Union. But unfortunately, instead of focusing on the issue of housing or energy, climate, cost of living, the real problems facing Irish people on a day-to-day, it was kicked off by months of debates around immigration and asylum, because of a race riot that occurred in Ireland a few months back. And this was only re-emphasized when race riots sprung up across the entirety of their neighboring country, the United Kingdom. This created a situation where even parties that loudly proclaimed their left-wing credentials, like Sinn Féin, felt the need to radically shift rapidly on immigration. And this created a situation where Sinn Féin ended up becoming more and more looking like a party that was willing to say whatever was necessary to get elected, which in an election in a climate globally that's against establishment forces. And as we can see, those establishment parties aren't doing any better, they're just not doing significantly worse right now. It isn't a good move to start, reflecting the views of your opposition that you're currently trying to take power from. Now comes coalition formation, or rather the campaign from several parties to not join the coalition. See, Labour Youth Ireland has already pulled the trigger on this, coming out with a strong statement saying that it doesn't make any sense for them to join the Fine Gael Fine Gael coalition, saying that they disagree on fundamental facts of governments, not just on an ideological level, but core economic realities of what's happening in Ireland. They see themselves as just becoming a silent partner that's going to take the blame just like the Greens did. They argue very astutely that they want to be a party of government, but they want to be a party of government in a government that they can actually govern and do things, not one that they're just going to end up in the same position as the Greens. Unfortunately, a lot of crises are going to hit Ireland in the next few years. Ireland is a country that became very wealthy because of the globalized economy that is screeching to a halt right now. Things like the Trump tariffs will dramatically wreck the current economic system that is happening. And in this small moment of time, we have to understand that Ireland actually has a lot of money to do a lot of things right now. And if people do not act upon that, building better housing, converting the economy, helping get the energy system away from fossil fuels, then you won't have the resources to do it later, likely. And that is something you should keep in mind. It's important to do the things now when you're able and not to push it off for another day. Because can Ireland really wait till 2029, the next election, for things to start working in the right direction? I don't think so. I don't think anyone wants to live through another half decade of the housing crisis, another lost decade for Ireland. Ireland's young people and elderly who suffer the most from this. Those without means who do not get the joys of the growing economy. Because at the end of the day, so much profit is being made, but so little is getting to the people. Thank you.